Advisors that are too hungry might tend to implement a plan or close business too early. In other words, when they can. I could get these guys now. This is not the objective. Almost acting, sometimes because you can't appear like this is too easy.
Welcome into Impactful Conversations, stories and lessons for financial advisors. I'm your host, Dave Edgecombe. We've got yet another good one, and one that I've been looking forward to for a little while once it was kind of put on my radar, sitting down with Daryl Bryant, Impact's former #1 advisor, sold his practice, and I mean, what are you doing now? What's going on with you?
Well, staying kind of busy, but doing a lot of flying, flight training, and continuing piloting, and training my dogs, and hitting the gym, and that's kind of it. Relaxing. Yeah,
and you
so
find your way back to Impact because you're sort of embarking on this next chapter of mentor and coach and kind of coming on and showing some of our other advisors the ropes and how you went from a $6 million shop to a $100 million shop where you ultimately got out of the game. So I think it's an incredible story, and one that I certainly want to kind of peel apart, and we'll start at the beginning.
Sure.
We'll talk about the S word, which I picked up from you yesterday a little bit from when you were giving your presentation and kind of showing what you're going to talk about at the upcoming seminar in the next couple of weeks.
I'm not sure what the S word is, but we'll get there.
Even better, even better. A couple of analogies that you use with me: the doctor, the mechanic, a line that I love, and then the Columbo Close, which I cannot wait to get to. I will say the way that I kind of found you when I came to Impact was I found your homepage first, video, and I saw you ride the Harley in it.
Indian.
You ride the Indian in it. You're flying a plane in it.
Yeah.
You're a pretty interesting guy.
Depends on who you ask.
Well, if you ask me, I say you're interesting, and I think your story for how you got to this hot seat today is also really interesting. So I'm going to have you go into the time machine a little bit. So,
okay, sure.
So you don't need to give me the years and the exact specifics, but I mean, where did you start in this industry?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I started selling life insurance off of a little grease board, going door to door and see people ask for money. I was in the insurance business and thought I was in the investment business. Although all I had was an insurance license, so I should have been able to figure that out. But then once the contract's coming back, they're saying, "Oh, these are life insurance policies." Oh, I'm selling life insurance. I've worked for banks. I've been independent and then not independent, and et cetera. Worked for major insurance companies like New England Financial, John Hancock, et cetera. So I've done pretty much everything. I did the direct mail leads and, with new mortgages, and sold mortgage acceleration plans, and, just trying to keep the motor running, and eventually landed with Impact once I had been independent for a little bit, and had another IMO that didn't work out, but landed with Game Plan and then Impact, and one thing led to another, eventually starting the radio show. After several years with Impact, a radio show became available. This was after I had been convinced to do some personality endorsements on that same radio station. And so finally decided to put my money where my mouth was, and I told myself I was really good at this, but I really wasn't seeing all that many people, and really had no credibility in the marketplace or brand. And once the radio show started and was coached up real well with the Impact folks, that took traction, and eventually had 3 hours running on the radio per week in the Omaha, Nebraska market, personality endorsements running on the same station every day, market report at the end of the day, market recap on the evening drive, 3-minute spots during Rush Limbaugh, same radio station. Eventually that's all we did. We exited, I did seminars, but once we really got traction and a brand in Omaha, Nebraska, we kind of became a household name. And thanks to the coaching that I got, we produced a pretty nice radio show.
Yeah.
And, so that was good.
We talked briefly yesterday about your sort of feelings at the closing table and how you kind of approached it. And you used what it sounded like to me was when you sit down with somebody, you know the answer pretty early on when you're talking with them. You get the numbers, you get the idea of what they want, what their retirement looks like, but you're not giving them that answer right off the bat. You're kind of leading them on this journey of well, I know how to solve this problem, but I'm not going to give them the answer in the first 20 minutes of when I'm sitting down with them. I'm going to kind of take them on this journey.
Okay, so yes.
Yes, but.
So we have a pretty important job in people's lives, and people hope that we are who they are hoping for. People want you to be a certain thing when they walk in the office, and if you have a radio show, they believe you're going to be a certain demeanor and so forth, and that's going to carry on, and that you're good at what you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the radio, and otherwise, they wouldn't have wanted to schedule with you. So certainly, you can then take a demeanor of, I'm the professor, I mean, where does it hurt? Or I'm the doctor, etc. A doctor can walk in the office, you got a problem, you go to the doctor. So on the one hand, you can take that demeanor, is my point.
Yep.
In that you called me. So what's going on? And how can we help? So we do get to enjoy that, that demeanor and continue that demeanor throughout the relationship. However, unlike a doctor, if you go to the doctor, you're not looking for an education on a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
I hurt here. What's the problem? What's the diagnosis and what's the prescription? And can I go now? Right? I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
So bedside manner is kind of important, but not paramount.
Yep.
If he's a good doctor, that's all I really wanted.
Yeah.
In our line of work, you do get to enjoy that doctor client relationship to a degree, but these are really important decisions, and we're not asking for a portion of their dollars, and we would not take a portion of someone's dollars. I'm either the guy and I would say exactly that. I'm either the guy or I'm not the guy. But no, we can't start with a few $100,000 and work our way up, because we're putting together, I need to know what the right hand is, left hand needs to know what the right hand's doing here. So we have to have control of everything. So, however, indeed, if you, let's say a 60-year-old walks in your office and they say, and you already know their stuff because we don't allow them to come into the office unless we already have their statements, or we'll move them, and we tell them that we have to be prepared for you to make it time effective. And so, but I could, if I had all their data and we want this amount of income, we want to start here, here's our numbers, I could put together, obviously, an income, as any advisor running around that has some decent software, you could put together an income plan and something that would be palatable and work without ever seeing the people, right? It's just data. But that's not the way the world works, and because they're the decision maker on this, and they're going to pull the trigger when they are comfortable. So we need to walk them through concepts. And as Gary Reed, who did we're here doing tune-up for our some presentations coming up in 2025. As I listened to Gary poignantly yesterday point out, people don't buy products. People buy you, yes, but they buy concepts. They buy peace of mind, etc. So we have to back up the bus a little bit and say, look, I think there's a few things that you're not getting, that you don't know, just kind of based on a couple of things you just said, Bob. So I want to show you a couple of things that I think maybe you ought to be aware of. But I'm the professor, I'm the doctor, right? I'm the good dad. Okay, so demeanor wise. And so, okay, all right, what do I don't know? What do I not know? And so we'd walk them through things that we believe that they should understand, like sequence of returns risk and so forth, and product availability that they were not aware of. And so indeed, to answer your question, you do get to enjoy, and I think you should, if you can, embrace that the position of authority in the room. I have my hands on the rudder, right? We're going to go. I'll get to that question. That's a relevant question, Bob. Not now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me finish. Let me cook.
Yeah. And so that gives you opportunity then, if you're in the driver's seat, to introduce concepts at the time when they're most effective and relevant to the path of the conversation, naturally. So hope that answered your question.
I think it does. And something else that I wanted to touch on, because if you're as busy as you guys were, and you're doing appointments, it's easy for things to start to get stale. The S word. the alluded to S word. You feel better now that you know. I do think that's an important thing, and I'm curious to know how you sort of keep your practice and keep what you're doing fresh when it is so mechanized and it is so routine.
Yeah, because we had a machine, and on the few occasions when we allowed other advisors to come in and observe, they would use that word. You guys have a machine going here. I mean, from soup to nuts, everything was dialed. So you can get a little bored. It's the same thing every day. I mean, every client is a little bit different. Every experience with some client is going to be, it's going to go a little differently from one to the next. But tax law is not changing. IRA rules aren't changing, right? I mean, products aren't. I mean, they're changing a little bit, but so the subject matter can get a little stale for me. But again, even back to Gary, who has, I was in the business 37 years or something, similar with Gary, and he pointed this out as well, and we talked afterward. And when you've been in the business so long, it's understandable that we'd come to some similar conclusions, and recognize some similar things. One of which, to your point, is don't try to reinvent the wheel. Right? You've developed a process that works. Your tendency to do that would ordinarily come from, oops, I missed that one. Oh, I should be starting to do something else. Well, no. I mean, maybe there was a point that you missed in that conversation, or not everybody's going to be. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
You don't bat 1,000. I mean,
yeah, you're not going to bat 1,000. And so your tendency sometimes is, whether from boredom or a lost case, that I'm doing something wrong, something wrong on the lost case part. Or I'm just kind of getting bored. Let's switch this thing up because I feel stale, right? And
yeah,
certainly that.
Oh, yeah.
We go through that if you're high volume, and you really have to fight that tendency. You just have to. Because if you're doing the math and you're having good staff meetings and so forth, what your numbers are. Where you stand in terms of industry standards and what you've done in the past and your closing rate and all that kind of thing. The wheels aren't coming off here, right? Everything's fine. Just keep doing what you're doing because you have a formula that works. But to try to spice things up a little bit, and that's what you do when things are getting stale.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, but again, there are certain components which we'll talk about in our upcoming events that were must-haves in the appointments. They were must discuss subject matter. Sequence of returns risk comes to mind, and obviously the retirement success system software that we use, which is very simple, and I think people are going to like that a lot. But there are certain things you must discuss, and it's just the way it is. So get over it.
You mentioned Gary Reed a couple of times. We sat down with Gary and did a podcast with him as well, and it was insightful, and he used a lot of the same things that you're talking about in terms of keeping it fresh and noticing when things go stale and having that why statement in stories and the importance of stories.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you told me yesterday was a sentence that you would use if you were meeting with a prospect, and it was, let me think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because, well, I know why I love it, because it implies that you're thinking. It implies that there's work to be done, and this is why you've come to me.
Mm-hmm.
If I knew all the answers, you could know all the answers, and it wouldn't make any sense. So
right.
As a financial advisor, is it all right to not know the answer?
Well, sure. I mean, you don't want it to appear like you have want to hold yourself out to be somebody that you're not. I mean, nobody knows everything. If you go to the doctor, again, I mean, sometimes I'm going to look into this because here's the way I feel, but I got a guy, so I'm going to call him, and we were just talking about this. Whatever he might say, you're not offended by that. You want the truth, and you want the right diagnosis, and whatever it is. And by the same token, when we talk about, let me think about that, however, what we'll discuss, at least to some extent in these upcoming seminars, is demeanor, which also takes us to Colombo, which is what you're...
You got there. Yeah, I had a whole bit worked out. I think that's everything. But wait, there's one more thing.
So if you don't know who Columbo is, Peter Falk, an old crime investigation show. very popular, and this is a frumpy guy, and nobody respected him, etc. But the clincher in this show every week was he wasn't respected by the guy that was the villain, right? The guy that's the villain thinks that he's gotten this guy's an idiot.
Gotten away with it.
Yeah,
He's in the clear.
I'm smart. I'm getting on my yacht. Thanks for coming by, Colombo. I got my collar turned up. Back in the '80s, or wherever it was, we were doing that, and I'm jumping on my little yacht and going away. So peace out. Got a little smirk on his face, and so Columbo turns and then he stops with his back to the guy. Got a cigar, right? Crumpled up, trench coat. And he goes, "There's just one thing that's bothering me, That is not a sentence that I would use necessarily, but the demeanor of that is, I realized when I was standing there at the conference table, and of course, I would sit with the clients and I would collect data and, have a conversation and be relaxed and help them to relax. Then I'd get up and explain some things and up and down, try to keep the room moving a little bit. But it's a demeanor where I think people who are hungry, advisors that are too hungry, might tend to try to implement a plan or close business too early. Yeah, in other words, when they can. I could get these guys now. Okay, well, this is not the objective.
Yep.
Okay, we're trying to walk them down a path to come to a conclusion and take advantage of the recommendations. We have the expertise and we're trying to do a great job for these people. But indeed, it's still kind of a little bit of a to the point at the top. I could do this right now. I don't even need to talk with you. Okay, if you just gave me the keys, I can knock this out and we'll tell you what we did. But that's not the way it works. And so we have to appear. It's almost acting, sometimes, because you can't appear like this is too easy. To tell somebody that this is an easy case. You're in great shape. When you leave here, I want you to know, we only got through our first meeting here. I want you to know you're in great shape, and what you're asking for is not enough relative to what you could have during retirement. So I want you to go away with that, right? So, but we still have to walk them through processes, and we still have to show them that we're thinking and so forth. And so oftentimes, finally to the point on the Colombo thing, is the demeanor. Is we might have a person, very regularly we'd have people in the second appointment, and they're advisors, and they'll write business on the second appointment, and that's fine, if that's working for you. I didn't want to do it because I knew there's a little bit higher possibility. They'll come back in for the third. We have a great relationship, right? So we've come to a conclusion, in fairness, in the second appointment, right? We've been together for 2 appointments at 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of time.
Okay, we've been together now for 4 hours. So they're understanding concepts. They're buying. Okay, they're sold on, working with us and so forth. So we go through the income plan and the software, which we'll discuss in these meetings, and they'll say, "Well, this sounds great. This is looking." So I'll be standing there, and I've input things. I say, "Okay, so you understand this, you understand that, you understand. Here's what you want, here's what you have, here's what you're short, here's how we're getting the red out, etc." Like Visine, and
just casually dropping that in there. I love that. Okay.
So yeah, not everybody gets that. Yeah, and when you hire these younger people, they don't get it. It's like, okay, that was a commercial, but the client sure gets it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're getting the red out, but you understand this. You understand. Yeah, this looks really good. So how do we get started? We'll take care of that, and of course, eventually we'll get all your paperwork done for you. But but how do we get started? I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Well, what do you mean you're not ready? Right? Because that's the client's line, isn't it? I'm not ready. I need to think about it.
Yeah, and you've.
So, but I'm the guy. Yeah. So there's a lot of in fairness, there's a lot of reverse psychology that can be employed. There's a lot of if you have a lot of at bats, then you understand a lot of the ripple effect. What's the effect of this statement going to have after they soak in it? Not now, but what's the effect of that statement, and what is the effect of the accumulated product, or the accumulated product that they just witnessed of who our office is? What do they say when they get back in their car? right? What's the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth when they shut the car door? And we want to be able to envision what that is naturally. We want them to at least look at each other and go, huh, it sounds like we're in good shape. This guy, what a great office staff, whatever it is. Okay, we want them to say positive things. So we want to understand the ripple effect of a good number of subject matter. But if I Columbo, okay, then what I'm simply doing is, and it happens many times during the process of interviewing the client, because I might be thinking, where am I going to take this conversation? But I might be just looking at the numbers and say, let me think here a second, just put my pencil on the numbers and stare at them. But really in my mind, I'm thinking, where am I going to go here?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, what have we talked about, and et cetera, and, kind of recapping in my mind, which is fine. They want you to think, okay? They're paying you to think, right? So this is not offensive. And by the same token, for me to say, let me think about this. Let me fine tune this. But it sounds like you're saying you like the concept, because we're doing the Wharton model, right? And we'll talk about that in the seminar. We're doing the Wharton model, and you see how this is the Wharton model, like what we talked about before. Yeah, oh yeah, we see that. Okay, all right. Well, let me kick this around a little bit, and let me stew on this a little bit, and then see if I can't fine tune this a little bit. But I think we're on the right track. Don't you think we're on the right track? Yeah, we're on the right track. Okay.
Okay, that's helpful. We're on the right track.
All right, let's go ahead and let's wrap up for today, and let me do my work, and we'll see you next week. And so off they go. They schedule on the way out the door, and when they come in finally, really the the third appointment it's really not a presentation. It's not a close. Okay, it's an implementation, but they already know. They're coming in to see, well, did he tighten anything up? Did he tighten any bolts or anything, or what? And that's what they're going to say. How did it turn out? But they're ready to do paperwork when they walk in the door for the third time. So now to wrap up to the point of that advisor that's closing too early and maybe has a problem with attrition, et cetera. I don't want to close business until, not when I can, but when I know, because if I can today and we have a good relationship, I can tomorrow, right? I can next week too. But allowing them to see that I'm not in a hurry, allowing them to know that I'm doing the thinking and I have their best interest in mind. It all points toward that, right? Everything is pointing toward that conclusion on who they know now that we are. And so when we do the Columbo, we're saying, well, let me just, I might be jotting something down, and they're asking, okay, right? I'm busy. Hold on. Okay. Right. But you have that authority in the room, but they want you to have that authority. Generally, that's why they're there. Mm-hmm. So the Columbo is really just my pet name for kind of, let me stew on this a little bit,
When Beth initially told me about it, I thought, in my naivete, I just thought that the Columbo Close was canned. I thought everyone knew what it was. And you revealed to me that, no, this is my thing here, buddy. I came up with the Columbo
Well,
Close.
I don't know if it's popped up elsewhere, but it'd be interesting if it did. Yeah, I just, one day, it just kind of popped in my brain because I kind of reminded myself of Peter Falk's demeanor on that show. Yeah.
And not his appearance. You weren't frumpled. You weren't doing
Not
any
frumpled,
of that jazz.
no.
You weren't committing to, you weren't a method actor in that regard. But
yeah, that's right.
So this is what I was going to say. There is just one more thing, and do the Columbo thing, and then you beat me to it. So I got nothing here. I'm frazzled. I got nothing. But I do think we're going to have you back on, because I think you've touched on a lot of things at the closing table and the psychology and why you would do certain things in that room, which I think is gold, and I think a lot of advisors need to hear. So if you're willing to, would you please come back and do another one? We'll turn the heat on. We'll make it a little bit warmer in here if we can, because it's a little chilly in here.
Well, my nose is running, and
Beth had the same thing. When we had Beth in here, it was the same deal afterwards. It was, whoo, let's go get a jacket on. I'm going to do a jump rope or something. So, Daryl, thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah,
Thank you for covering, the Columbo Close, but also a whole array of other things that financial advisors, I hope, will take to heart and potentially implement into their practice.
Well, I hope it helps. Yeah.
We look forward to having you back in here
Okay.
as well. If you're looking to grow your practice, our YouTube channel is a great resource. We've got house rules, we've got selling with stories, and of course, we've got other impactful conversations episodes as well. We mentioned Gary Reed, we mentioned Beth Page. There's a library. Feel free to scroll through that and see what kind of great resources are out there. And we'll see you next time.